Welcome back to Loserville, folks. Philip Kingston here in Dallas, along with trusty co-host David De La Fuente, the smartest man in Dallas politics. So smart he's not in Dallas.
Yeah, though it's actually not that hot right now, which is weird. Like it was very enjoyable this past weekend. I was at the SMU Baylor game at 11 a.m. kickoff and people weren't fainting, so it was pretty nice.
That was a game. I went to Baylor for law school, so
Yeah.
people always ask me, are you a Baylor fan? And I'm very much not. Like going to
Yeah.
law school in some place does not really bond you to that team. And also, the school is a piece of shit. Like the law school is really good, and the
Yeah.
undergrad it's like a hellhole. And SMU pretty much sucks a lot too. So I'm like, yeah, could they both lose? Like,
I'm an SMU guy and I I I like it. I try to make it better with my time and where I choose to give back to the university. But I do have to say the Baylor fans were pretty nice, like pretty chill.
they are pretty chill.
I'll give them that. And I had somebody jokingly refer to it as the we all also got in the TCU Bowl.
The uh funny, I'd rather go to SMU than TCU from an academic standpoint. But the
Well, no, sorry, that's the joke essentially. Like every single Baylor student and every single SMU student also got in the TCU.
yeah.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah, but the only reason you would want to like blow the horn about that is just because their football team's better.
yeah,
I don't know. But anyway, I'm being a little bit snarky about SMU because I don't like their politics, but
sure.
the tailgate is fantastic. It's a
Yeah.
great game experience.
Yeah. And I mean, times are changing a little bit. Like obviously, like right now, if you go to a place like SMU or Baylor, like it's pretty like MAGA, especially like the younger men there. But what's really fascinating is if you go back to 2020 and you take like all the major Texas universities, at the campus precincts, SMU and Baylor voted for Biden over Trump. Which
Well,
is
I
like
mean,
shocking. Like
it's
like if you
shocking, but it's also like these uh, the the manosphere
yeah,
brocentric people in their 20s. Man, those stupid motherfuckers aren't voting.
that's fair. But SMU and Baylor's campuses voted for Trump in 2024.
Nice.
So it's like they're quintessential like Biden to Trump precincts across the state. I think Texas Tech was the other one, and then
Hmm.
like Texas, A&M, Rice, like all of them voted Biden Harris, and then TCU was the Trump university, like pretty much like the only major Texas university that was Trump.
I can't believe A&M went for Biden.
Biden and Harris.
I haven't been on A&M's campus since about 2018, so
Yeah.
my info's a little dated, but it felt like a much better place than when I visited it in high school, which is admittedly in prehistory. It was
Yeah.
literally in the last millennium. Um, but it had improved quite a bit. It looked a lot more like a modern university right up until you started talking to people.
Yeah.
And then, and then it's still a fucking hellhole.
Yeah. I think the student body is caught up with the investments to the university is you know and it is like A&M's like actually like a really really good school, and I
For
think some of
certain
the
things,
yeah, for certain
it
things, but like the like now kind of like the best and brightest in Texas are considering it, so like that kind of makes sense that the politics are shifting underneath it.
yeah, I guess so. Well, we took a little bit of a break, which we didn't really mean to do, but we couldn't get the guests we wanted, and we don't have one today. So cruise show, but there's just too much going on
Yeah,
to delay anymore. We had to start talking about it. Um, should we go in like recency order?
sure.
the Texas Supreme Court, unsurprisingly, denied the city of Dallas's petition for review to overturn the Dallas Court of Appeals decision that kept the certificates of occupancy for poker rooms alive. In normal people parlance, the Supreme Court kept Dallas's poker rooms alive and furthermore cleared the way for the pending applications, which have been pending for years now, to be processed. And because of my involvement with my law firm and with, people who see me as somebody who can work with City Hall, I already talked to one of the applicants who was waiting, and
Yeah.
they do intend to press and have their application processed. I actually didn't know about this. You caught this before I did because there's been almost no media coverage. Like it came out on Friday, and the only people who covered it were Poker News, which is
Yeah.
great. But it's wild that nobody, I guess maybe nobody was working
I
at
think
any of
that
the
was it.
local outlets.
Yeah, Beth Erickson. So we're recording this on a Monday morning,
Hmm.
essentially. Like Beth Erickson at D Magazine covered it this morning.
Yeah.
But to your point, I guess it was like so small potatoes for most people that most people held until Monday to start actually reporting on the Friday court decision.
Well, I mean, I think that's just a function of current Dallas media being largely young people with little experience. Because the story is actually a classic Dallas
Yeah.
tale of calumny and just an arrogant city staff ignoring the will of the people and the will of the council, as a matter of fact. And so, I mean, this all started when, um, I mean, it's really a strange thing. We started to get applications for poker rooms back in 2014,
Wow, a long time ago. I
was
didn't
the
realize
first one
that.
I can remember. And the city attorney at that point analyzed correctly, in my opinion, the Texas Penal Code concerning gambling and the private activity exception to the gambling prohibition. Texas has a blanket universal ban on gambling, other than the fucking lottery and some horse racing. There are things that creep in whenever there's a state budget crisis. They somehow fool themselves that gambling is going to fix the schools, you know?
Yeah.
And it's always, people like me and people like the Baptist Christian Life Commission and uh, the Urban Institute and other people are like, no, gambling's really bad. It actually harms people quite a bit. Um, so, but there is this private activity exception to the rule, which is basically designed to carve out private poker games because, and we know that because the poker games at the state's wealthiest, longest established country clubs have been going on since the beginning of Texas.
Yeah.
And the one at the legislature in the members' room, is over 100 years old. I mean, are the people who make these rules play fucking poker? And to me, there's actually a qualitative difference between regular gambling and private poker between friends. Like, I don't think anybody gets addicted to the Thursday night Hold'em game, you know?
Yeah. I think both you and
Um,
I probably have a similar position on gambling, honestly, and how you were describing it, but I agree completely that these things like should exist. And you know this better than me, but like cities like Austin and Houston have figured this out well before Dallas, right? Like their business community and their city halls have generally been able to make this work pretty well for them.
yeah, I agree with that. And so the back in 2014 or whenever it was, the city attorney quite correctly examined the state of the law and decided that whatever Dallas wanted or didn't want in terms of poker rooms, we really didn't have a choice. It simply wasn't an illegal activity under Texas state law. And therefore the question was, how are we going to zone it? What are the land use rules around poker rooms? And the first one was proposed for District 11, and Lee Kleinman was very much in favor of doing it, but he wanted to do it I mean, he acted totally responsibly. He
Yeah.
wanted to figure out how to do it in a way that wasn't going to piss off neighbors and whatever. And the location that they had found in his district was probably okay. There was some neighborhood opposition, but yeah, this last couple of weeks have shown me that there always fucking is. Um, and there's an op-ed in the paper today that we probably will get to. The so the city attorney, and this I think was actually cagey, decided that so the way zoning works is when you have a zoning code that was written in 1965 and you have a new use that you've never heard of before, you know, laser hair removal. That didn't exist in 1965. So where does it go? It sounds like a beauty parlor, right? It's offered in beauty parlors. Therefore, it's a new allowable use under beauty parlors, except we don't amend the code to say that. We issue what's called a building official's opinion or interpretation, which is a written memo that you can actually get access to. Now, they should be cataloged and searchable online, and they never will be, at least until I gather them all and chat GPT them.
Yeah.
Um, and that's the way we kind of deal with new stuff. And so the city attorney decided that this new thing most looked like a commercial amusement indoor, which is a very well established category. It's what I call Dave and Buster zoning. It's supposed to be games of chance played for not cash, because that would be illegal, prizes. I mean, we all know how Dave and Buster's works, right?
Yeah.
And so does that to you, David, sound like what a poker room is?
Close enough, I guess, you know.
Man, it's way away. So the way the zoning works
Oh,
is you're
sorry.
supposed to pick the category that's closest to
Yeah.
what the new use is. And this looks for all the world like private club activity to me. So I had advocated back then putting it into the country club zoning, um, or the private club exception to zoning that the TABC private club license gets you. You remember, you are young for this, but are you old enough to remember the days when University Park was dry?
Uh, I don't think so. I mean, I kind of remember the 2010 City of Dallas ballot measure.
University Park was on the same ballot.
Okay, I didn't realize
That
that.
happened at the same time.
Okay.
So before that, this is all such funny fictional stuff. Like when you're dry,
Yeah.
the
They were private
people,
clubs,
yeah, they
right?
were
Yeah.
private clubs, and there was a
Yeah.
thing called a Unicard, which
Yeah.
was this absolutely hilarious service where you paid like $1 one time, and your
Yeah.
driver's license went into the Unicard system, and then you were into every private club in
Yeah.
Texas. Made kind of a joke of it all, but in any case, the city attorney didn't like my interpretation because the country club zoning requires a golf course, which admittedly most poker rooms are not going to have. Perhaps they could
Good
have like
putt putt.
a golden tee machine.
Okay.
And I tried everything. In any case, they were, but the reason it was cagey on the part of the city attorney is because commercial amusement indoor in almost every zoning category in which it is allowed as an activity requires a specific use permit. So this was going to allow council to essentially determine where poker rooms went and didn't go. And the whole reason they would want to do that is because people were scared of poker rooms. They didn't understand how they worked, and they were worried about the negative effects and whether
Yep.
neighbors were going to hate it or whatever. And the truth is, if you've ever like been to a poker room, it's like a bar where nobody's drinking. It's like the least. negative impact on its surrounding neighborhood that you could possibly have. As long as it has adequate parking, nobody even knows it's operating, essentially.
Yeah.
You just don't have drunken brawls at a poker room. Like that's not a thing. So in any case, the that first like 2014 application didn't go anywhere, and I can't remember why. I think they gave up or whatever. But shortly thereafter, we had a couple of successful ones come in and get open. Texas Card House up in Northwest Dallas, and then there was another one in Northeast Dallas that I think is gone now. But in any case, they were operating, and there were multiple applications for certificates of occupancy, which is the little permit that you put in your window that allows you to be open. And all of a sudden, once Chris Queso became the city attorney, he reversed the interpretation, decided that poker rooms were illegal in Texas, despite having operated legally and safely and successfully in Houston and Austin for nearly 10 years at that point, and shut down the processing of the new applications and sent letters revoking the COs to the existing ones. And that second part was patently illegal. You cannot do that without due process, which they very much did. It was absolutely lawless, which was one of my complaints about Chris Queso. And so the obviously these successful businesses who were making, Texas Card House clears millions a year. This is a very big business and multiple locations. And so obviously they were going to take they weren't going to go quietly on this. So they immediately appealed that decision to because it wasn't really the city attorney that revoked the COs. The city attorney got the building official, the same person who issues the interpretations, to revoke the COs. And so then there's an appeal process within the city code that allows you to go to the Board of Adjustment for an adverse decision of the building official. And it's a very high bar. There are generally 5 members on a Board of Adjustment panel, and you have to get 4 of them to overturn a building official interpretation. And so they went to Board of Adjustment, and in fact won. Both of the card houses that were open won. And Chris Queso was so dedicated to this bit, and I have a theory on why, that he authorized the city of Dallas to sue its own Board of Adjustment to overturn their opinion, which reinstated the certificates of occupancy. So this is a real clusterfuck if the city of Dallas decides that its own Board of Adjustment has screwed up. In fact, there's a real good argument that the city of Dallas should never sue its own Board of Adjustment because since the city attorney advises the Board of Adjustment, it cannot be either the plaintiff or the defendant counsel for a lawsuit. So it winds up having to hire outside counsel for both the Board of Adjustment and for the city. Like it can't act as the city's lawyer either.
And how much is the
So,
city wasted at this point, like in terms of taxpayer money? It's pretty high up
um,
there, right?
well, just on it, we haven't seen the final bill
Okay.
from the appellate process,
Yeah.
but the last time I checked in, just the bill for representing the city of Dallas, which is going to be
Hmm.
the higher bills because they're the plaintiff essentially,
Yeah.
had were at like $765,000.
Yeah.
And then I don't know how much the council for the Board of Adjustment has charged us. So I'm going to guess we're into the 7 figures at this point on this entirely wasteful deal where we are essentially suing ourselves. And here's part of, I believe, the explanation for Queso's sudden zealous hatred of poker rooms. He hired his buddy Tom Brandt at Fanning Harper. Fanning Harper is a good firm, primarily known as an insurance defense firm. And I don't think I would be insulting those fine lawyers if I described it that way. That is historically what they have done. But for some reason, Chris Queso had a relationship with this Tom Brandt guy, and he's the guy who got hired to defend Dallas against the Exotica case. Do you remember Exotica?
Yep, yep. The downtown convention center convention that the city basically tried to kick out.
I mean, it was quite rightly described as a porn convention. That's
Yeah,
exactly what it was. It was a porn convention. Now, there's a lot of funny Robert Wolanski coverage of this from contemporaneous, where he went to this thing and he was like, imagine combining sex with a trade show. He's like, it's funny and it's boring. And
yeah,
and but Ray Hunt hated it
yeah,
and Kay Bailey Hutchison hated it. And so they got Mike Rawlings to shut it down. And Tom Brandt got that case and he made about $800,000 on that case to lose.
yeah,
Like Tom Brandt, as far as I know, has never won a case for the city of Dallas, but he's friends with Chris Queso. So there you go.
yeah.
And so anyway, in this case, after the Board of Adjustment and the city decides to sue, it proceeds to trial in Eric Moyer's court. Uh, Eric is a good friend. I think he got this one wrong, but he's a trial judge. You call him like you see him,
Yeah.
and he certainly does that. Eric is never like leaning towards some side or another for any inappropriate reason. He's quite his own person.
Hmm.
Um, and it essentially he bought the argument. We don't know exactly what he was thinking because trial judges in Texas state courts do not have to write opinions. And in fact, the system punishes them if they do write an opinion because it creates bases for the appellate court to reverse them. So it's good judicial hygiene for them to not say why they're ruling. And the he seemed to buy the argument that if so that basically the attorney general has issued an opinion that says that private activity can be performed in a public place, meaning you can have a private poker game at a poker room so long as the house, the operator, is not taking a rake, which is
Hmm.
just an industry term for a cut of whatever is wagered. And no poker rooms take a rake. Like this, it's kind of an industry standard in and of itself, because it makes the accounting very creepy and it also freaks players out. It makes them think that they're being cheated.
Hmm.
So nobody does it. The software that everybody uses to manage these kinds of operations doesn't even allow it. Like the industry has really created its own set of standards here, because as you can imagine, the history of poker is if somebody cheats, you shoot them.
Yeah.
So there's some drawbacks to being a jerk here, and so he seemed to buy the argument though that the tips that players might give to dealers and to servers in the club constituted a benefit to the operator. Now, that's a very wild theory because if the operator is benefiting from tips to employees, that's known as wage theft under the Fair Labor Standards Act. Like that cannot be tipped employees cannot share that compensation with their employer in any way. It
Yeah.
can't serve as a substitute for their hourly wages, and it can't be pooled and shared and taken from them in that way. So that was a wild theory. In any case, City of Dallas wins at the trial court, goes up on appeal. Interesting opinion, at least to a nerd like me, from the Dallas Court of Appeals, um, from Bonnie Goldstein.
Goldstein. Yeah.
Um, when I first read it, I didn't think very much of it. And the more I thought about it, the more I thought she may have had a really good idea here. She decided that Eric Moyer, the judge in the trial court, had used the wrong standard of review on the evidence he was seeing. She decided that his review was basically de novo. He looked at the evidence and rendered his judgment. She said, no, what you have to do is treat the Board of Adjustment with more respect than that, and you owe them an abuse of discretion standard, meaning you have to find exactly why their judgment is unreasonable under that they have taken their discretion and abused it. And you can abuse your discretion in a couple ways. One is to violate a clear rule.
Mhm.
Very hard to understand how that would happen here because the rule's clear as mud. Um, or you don't exercise your discretion, which is not what happened here. And so the interesting thing about Bonnie's opinion is that it doesn't describe what an abuse of discretion from a board of adjustment would look like. So she kind of has left an interesting conundrum in land use law, which is if you want to appeal the board of adjustment to a district court, which you have the right to do under state law, I don't know how a district judge now looks at what the Board of Adjustment did and makes a decision that adequately shows an abuse of discretion on the Board of Adjustment's part. Back to trial judges in Texas never write opinions. This kind of demands that they would have to, or they would automatically be overturned on appeal, which is a real weird position to put them in.
Yeah.
But it just gifted the Board of Adjustment enormous power. And since I believe that the board got it right on this particular one, it's good. But since I also believe that the Board of Adjustment sometimes is staffed by idiots, not currently, not any current members, but it's happened in history,
Historically.
I'm a little scared of this rule. And so anyway, the city at that point, I started getting on the phone to council members saying, okay, we lost at the Court of Appeals. It is time to give up. I mean,
Yeah.
this is one of the things that they cited when they fired Queso. And, the newspaper will say that he resigned,
Yeah.
but
But
he most certainly did not resign. So, I thought 10 or 11 kind of like agreements that this should be over. And then they had their executive session on it. And the next thing you know, I get a, well, let me see. I get a communication that I'm not going to further describe that they had decided to pursue an appeal to the Texas Supreme Court. And I just about lost my shit because I had already drafted a new section of zoning to send to the Zoning Ordinance Advisory Committee that I've titled it Private Gaming Club, which is frankly an idea that came from Tammy Palomino, who is now the city attorney. And so I don't know why she would pursue this at all. Anyway, it's a total clusterfuck and just a real example of the city attorney running amok and its ability in closed session to talk council members into really bad ideas.
yeah. And
Um,
obviously you don't know what happened in that executive session, but are there any
no, I
council
have no
members
idea.
but are there any council members that have been like super public either way to continue the lawsuit or to end it?
No, nobody's been public. Now, what
Okay.
we've heard is behind the scenes, Kara has been pushing extremely hard to continue the lawsuit.
Okay.
Um, and why anybody would cater to her, especially in the last council where she seemed to be on an island, I have no idea. Because even EJ didn't seem to care about this. I mean, obviously, he's seen the game at the Capitol.
Yeah.
So I was as mad as I could be. I was like, I didn't quite understand what was going on. Chad, had been very vocal about shutting this litigation down, and I think he was quite disappointed. But anyway, this was more legal nerd shit. Sorry, we are burdening the show with so much legalese, but I'm kind of wrapped up in this. Bonnie Goldstein's opinion at the Dallas Court of Appeals is what's known as a procedural ruling. It doesn't interpret the penal code at all. It doesn't address the substance of the party's arguments. It made a ruling based on what she described as an improper procedure by Eric Noye, which I think is a little unfair because there was no rule before this ruling, but that's what happens sometimes in the
Yeah.
law. And I mean, Er- Er- Eric's ego is based on many other more important things than this opinion. So I'm not worried about him. But it is almost an ironclad rule that the Texas Supreme Court, which doesn't have to take any cases, and it is quickly moving toward a situation where it does not take any cases, um, it will never take a case on a pure that was decided on a purely procedural matter unless it is so important to the administration of justice that it would potentially shut down courts or something like that. And I can't even imagine what that would be. So anybody looking at this from the outside would know that paying for an appeal to the Supreme Court was a just lighting money on fire.
Yeah.
But here's some more billing from Tom Brandt, and now we're down the road, and we have the outcome that I've been predicting since they appealed. And so I will in fact have my epitaph be "I told you so," which is just as attractive as it sounds to the listener right now. But I can't help it. Like, if I tell you something and I'm telling you it's absolutely going to happen, and you decide to listen to some other lawyer who's been wrong over and over and over, well, man, I don't know how to help you. But I'd hate that you're doing it with my tax dollars. If you're a private client or whatever, you can just fire me. I don't give a shit. You don't have to listen to
Yeah.
me. But if I'm paying for it, I would like to be heard. And it appears to me that there was no real political will to do any of this stuff. This all seems to have been generated inside 1500 Marilla without any sort of public groundswell. Like, if you polled people, do you want legal poker rooms in the city of Dallas? You're the professional on this. So I'm telling you that I'm using my divining rod. And this is not,
It's
scientific.
probably like 70-30, something like
That's what
that.
I would have guessed. That's
Yeah,
what I was going to
it's
say.
it's similar to like probably like Prop R marijuana
Yeah.
decriminalization, things like that, where like just, like I want to be clear here, like I don't personally like smoke marijuana. I don't personally gamble. I neither one of those appeals to me. But the notion that we're banning it, or at least this version of gambling, to be clear, um, is asinine to me. And it felt like, I mean, I can't even describe it as well as you can, even though, just for the record, I'm the one that texts back, should we talk about this, as opposed to like the list that you sent me. So obviously I have interest, but just from what I had read and gathered over the years, it just felt like this was always a losing case given what state law was, despite being murky.
That's the key point.
Yeah.
This is not our decision to make. And
Mhm.
that's what I've been trying to communicate to the city attorney, and not just me. I mean, my partner Roger Albright has been working on this stuff since the beginning, since the very, very beginning. And Texas Card House, by the way, is not a client. They did not hire us. They have very fine lawyers who did, obviously they did a great job. They won.
Yeah.
And so I'm speaking both in my capacity as somebody who does represent some card rooms, but also just a fucking interested taxpayer who understands how this shit works.
Yeah.
And believe me, I have this podcast where people listen to me and they think that maybe I know something. I'm here to tell you that there are over 20,000 lawyers in Dallas, and I can name 1,000 of them who are smarter than I am. Like, it's very easy for me to tell you who a better lawyer is. That's how easy this question is. So
Yeah.
I don't know. It's this one was really infuriating to me. A real example of your vote doesn't mean anything.
Yeah. That makes sense. Um,
Anyway,
yeah.
I've
Well, speaking of,
resubmitted my zoning draft to the Zoning Ordinance Advisory Committee, which has met all of 3 times in 2025. And so maybe this will be enough to spark another meeting of that august body.
yeah. I mean, I hope things go well. I hope the city stops screwing this up. I mean, but speaking of like wasting taxpayer money and like what else it could go towards, I mean, I think one of the other big stories last week was, beginning of the public budgeting process.
Hmm.
And, it goes back, you mentioned Councilmember Kleinman previously, the Ministry of Happiness type stuff, and they had a long series of votes and debate over how do you treat libraries and the aquatics part of Dallas parks. Do you want to go into that a little bit?
Yeah, I think it's really important. I mean,
Yeah,
one of the things that you and I first um, were really surprised by in Kim's proposed budget was that it combined really deep service cuts to well-loved services such as libraries and pools
yeah,
with a further tax rate cut, which every budget since 2014 has reduced the tax rate in the city of Dallas. I mean, when I got into office, we were paying 797 per thousand, and now we're down to what is it under 70 per thousand?
totally.
It's
Yeah,
yeah, I mean, it's a seriously significant drop in the rate. Now, people are right if they point out that property values have skyrocketed so that the actual taxes that you pay have gone up. Not for everybody and not equally all over the place, which is another fairness issue. But we live in
yeah,
Texas and we love our property taxes. What can I tell you? We
yeah,
love CTE from high school football and we love property taxes.
yeah.
And if you try to challenge either one of those things, perhaps there's a different state for you.
Yeah. Well,
Um,
and we love paying a lot in homeowners insurance. Like
yes.
I don't know if you and Melissa still have your mortgage, but my wife and I do, and we pay more every month in escrow than we pay in either interest or in principal. Escrow is our single biggest line item in our mortgage right now.
Jesus. Well, Melissa and I still have a little bit of mortgage on the main house, mostly
Yeah.
from being idiots about home improvements. We we would own this thing multiple times over if we hadn't if we weren't so irresponsible. But we also, have our little small real estate company. So
Yeah.
I'm paying on notes all over town.
Yeah.
And I'm feeling that too. In fact, I spent a huge amount of time on our vacation trying to move our insurance from one national carrier back to USAA,
Yeah.
which is going to wind up saving us about $10,000 this year.
Huh, that's not
So
bad.
just to give you an idea of what my insurance bills are like, they're
Yeah.
scary. And
Yeah.
I represent people who build multifamily housing, and I know of more than one medium to large size development that was scuttled in 2025 basically because of insurance costs.
That's insane. Yeah. Okay. Sorry to take us on a tangent. But I mean, it is kind of important. But yeah, I mean, basically, council had to vote or do straw votes on the manager's budget. And again, I think we talked about this last show. And, I'm very sympathetic to the position that Tolbert and her staff were put under. It's easy to throw tomatoes from where we are, given budget shortfall and Prop U, which is really making city staff's life basically impossible. And then it's council's job to show political will to save some things that we care about as residents and citizens of Dallas. So credit goes to, I think, Councilwoman Paula Blackman, who yet again kind of saved Skillman Library up in her district.
Yeah,
But
it did save Skillman Library.
yeah,
She wasn't alone, but
yeah,
she was critically important and looks like she might pull it off again.
yeah. Though because of the very legitimate problems that the city is facing financially, it looks like they're only going to be able to save it for 3 days a week as to the normal operating standards of 6 days a week. Is that right?
That's what I read today.
Yeah, yeah,
I mean, I'm not, I don't have any inside information on
of
that
course.
one.
Yeah, yeah,
I see it a little bit differently. Prop U is going to wind up in court somewhere, somehow, sometime.
yeah.
And so jerry rigging your budget in an environment which currently doesn't have a revenue shortfall, even though one was predicted, where did it go? It
Mhm.
didn't actually appear. I find that to be well, cowardly is too strong a word, but it's very non-strategic. If we're
Okay.
going to court anyway, why are we shutting libraries? Like that doesn't make any sense to me. And the other thing that doesn't make any sense is who was calling for a tax rate cut? I
Oh,
haven't
you mean,
heard
oh,
I haven't
yeah.
heard that in forever. Like I haven't heard that since before the Great Recession. And
It shows up in city surveys and in town hall feedback. Like it does, but I think at this point it's time for council to potentially use their best judgment on it. So I mean, it was obviously Councilman Basil Dua kind of gave them a pause or a reprieve for now of at least I guess this was another straw vote technically, but voting to maintain the tax rate to the past fiscal year, which would then increase revenue um, and be able to pay for a lot more things. I mean, all of our taxes are going to go up even with the cut, most likely, depending on how, DCAT and the county operate. But,
I don't think that's
it,
that clear because this last year the increases were spotty. They weren't all over the place because you
well, that's
actually
fair.
can't argue that prices are going up right now. They're not. They're
Yeah, they're
kind
not.
of
They're,
static.
yeah, yeah.
So I
Okay,
don't
so
know. I
that's
think
a good
Baz
point.
and maybe Kim knew that this might become an issue at council and was allowing her bosses to get credit for, hey, let's keep the rate the same as last year, which is a very reasonable idea. I would argue that it's better to just present the most reasonable document you can and
Yeah.
start from there. But
I,
maybe
I
that
actually
maybe
don't
that's
know
her
if she did
thinking.
counsel a favor here, if I'm being quite honest, because I
Tell me
think that
why.
I think there's a strong argument to be made that maintaining the previous tax rate, given what the city is facing, is the correct move. But I think forcing council to have a vote to raise the tax rate from a staff recommendation is not going to be politically popular. Because, and again, like this goes back to like how the average voter and just taxpayer operates. They want high quality city services, they want low taxes. And a good elected official knows how to balance that, but it is a balancing act. And so if you just ask anyone at face value, do you want a lower property tax rate? It's going to be pretty universal. The answer is going to be yes. I mean, you look at some of the recent statewide constitutional amendments from the state, like the one back in November 2023 to offer a one-time kind of like statewide property tax like refund, I think it was. It was more complicated than that, but that's really what it did. And that passed with like over 90% of the vote, something like that. Um,
Yeah,
you
this
know,
is extremely true. Like this is always a municipal governance debate and balancing act. And I think that you know, this is why we work together so well, because I'm make a wild ass statement based on thin facts, and you gather your facts and make a reasonable statement. The message to the listener is David's right. But the
except when I'm not.
what I would say is that when you first of all, we've discussed why opinion polling of city residents concerning their budget is valueless.
Yeah,
It just the better opinion measurement is the city council members. They're the ones who actually have to go get the votes.
yeah,
And typically these surveys that city managers do are intended to undercut their bosses by telling them they're wrong about what their people actually want.
yeah.
And so it's the same question is if you ask me, do I want a lake of stew and of whiskey too on the Big Rock Candy Mountain? Yes, I do. I want that.
Yeah,
But I'm smart enough to know it's not fucking realistic.
yeah.
And,
That's the
and I'm
issue at
smart
hand.
enough to know that 4,000 cops is not a realistic number for the city of Dallas, you
Yeah.
know? And I think I give people a little bit more credit, I guess. And maybe I'm stupid. That could be a really bad bet.
No, I don't think it's that they're stupid, and I don't think necessarily that you're wrong. I just think that given what the city is facing, they've kind of had the luxury over the past few years to consistently vote to lower the tax rate. and therefore go back to their voters and constituents and talk about the fact that they lowered the property tax rate for two main reasons. One is that the county had been increasing land values at an insane pace, though one that is, grounded in reality of just how much land actually was selling for in the city and increasing over the past few years. And then the other part being that just, you know, Dallas is growing. Obviously, like, people talk about it being somewhat stagnant compared to Frisco, but da city of Dallas was growing in terms of businesses and people, and that makes it a little bit easier to lower people's tax rates while increasing revenues. And this is going to be like one of the first harder budgets. Really, this is going to be the hardest budget for anyone currently serving on council.
Oh,
You take,
easily, easily,
yeah,
easily.
yeah, because it's the worst. They're encountering the worst economy uh, that any essentially, you look at the class of 2019 on council. This is like their seventh budget, right? If my math is right, yeah, it's their seventh budget, second to last. This is the first time the economy is kind of in the shitter without a federal bailout. Like obviously the COVID recession was brutal, but they got like really the
So
city
much
was
ARPA
complete.
money.
Yeah,
Yeah,
the city got bailed out completely to the federal government's credit at the time. Now we're about to probably hit like stagflation nationwide, and there is no help coming.
no, it's going to be
Um,
Japan in the 90s.
yeah, and
And
so
the way you
yeah,
accelerate that process is kick out all the immigrants.
yeah, which is going to be great for City of Dallas.
I mean, yeah, it's so, David, you and I, you're more plugged into national politics than I am, but we both care a lot about local politics.
Yeah,
And like, obviously, I can rant for an unlimited period of time about a arcane part of the penal code and the various machinations that have gone on with it. Um, I understand that that's not that important for most people's daily life, and I'm not trying to make it bigger than it is. But typically, city government should occupy a bigger space within
yeah,
people's lives, except in the current environment, it could not feel more like deck chairs, you know?
yeah.
This
I agree.
ship is headed for the fucking rocks,
Yeah,
and we're arguing about the paintings.
yeah, yeah. No, that's true. And I mean, the city council, city staff, they could always do better, but a lot of what's about to hit the city was completely out of all their control.
That's
And,
true.
I think the poker room situation is a great example of like a self-inflicted wound that is probably going to cost the city seven figures, as you said. But yeah, I mean, shit is really hitting the fan right now. This is going to be the first tough budget year. There's probably going to be a few more. Again, kudos to Councilwoman Blackman for saving Skillman Library for yet another year. We'll see if she can pull off the hat trick and do it again next budget year, because I'm sure staff is going to recommend again next budget year to shut down Skillman because for what it's worth, okay, let me take a step back. There's the question of should we shut down a library branch? And I think both you and I would say no. And then there's the second question of, well, if you had to shut down a library branch, which one would it be? And staff has said 2 years in a row, Skillman, which based on what I have read from, what they've presented as well as others, I think that's a reasonable enough choice because Skillman is technically very, very close to another library that is newer and larger and in better shape. Okay, sure. But then it goes back to the values proposition of like, should we really be closing a library that is actually used and people rely on? Probably not, especially to fund things that I think you and I and others would agree aren't as important as that.
I would hope that the new library director is collecting and being very careful to collect utilization data for Skillman, because
Yeah,
just my eyeball test from driving by it very often is that it's well used. Like
yeah,
it looks active during the day to me. And I would argue that we really, really ought to pay attention to utilization because there are, I mean, if we if you're creating a hypothetical where you must shoot one library in the head,
Yeah.
um, the one that people care about the least is probably your best candidate, and Skillman is not it. That is absolutely not the branch to close.
Yeah. I mean that's a good point too. Like you could do it based on what it looks like staff is doing it on, which is the lifespan of the library as well as proximity to other libraries, or you could do it based on usage. I think that's completely fair. I didn't really thought about it that way. The library near us, so is it that there's 30 total libraries, or is it that there's central plus 30 branches? Like are there 30 or 31? Do you know?
I think it's 31.
Okay. So there's 30 or 31, probably 31
Oh,
libraries across the
I've got
entire
this.
city.
I've got this fucking magic box.
Oh, nice. Yeah, we're like asking each other things as we're both on a computer right now. Yeah, but basically like there's only so as folks know, like I live in District 1 in North Oak Cliff. Even though there's like 31 libraries, like we only have one library in our entire council district. But as part of the bond in 2024, our library is going to get torn down and then rebuilt because our library was legitimately at the end of its lifespan. So if Skillman is at the end of its lifespan, I would hope that there would be political will in the city to tear it down and build it anew. You know what I'm saying?
Yes, I hear you, and I think you're
Yeah.
right about that. I was just noticing that Wikipedia is no help because it's got us at 26.
Yeah, it's definitely not 26. So Wikipedia is fake newsing us. It's an ad. This is an ad for Google
Wiki editors,
AI.
get off your ass. Enough
Yeah,
Cheetos.
yeah. This podcast is sponsored by Google AI. Use that instead of Wikipedia. Um, yeah, but I think what was that vote was like what 9-6, like nine
Hmm.
votes to save the library and six to shut it down. So I mean, pretty close. And then to your point earlier about pools, uh, this one I think is a little bit more murky in that the city has an aquatics department with or it's like subdivision within parks department. There are aquatic centers, which are like the super nice ones. They're mostly new. There's spray grounds, which are really cheap and nice, and the utility of them are very good for how little they cost to do. And then in
Especially
the
for
mid,
kids.
especially for kids, and then in the middle, there's community pools. So whereas a aquatic center has like a bunch of new fun stuff as and like activation features, and spray grounds are basically what they sound like. Community pools are just kind of pools, not a lot of activation features, and they're all like old as shit. Like they're all what, like 50 plus years old at this point. Like all
The
nine
three
of
they
them.
identified are maybe older than that, but yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. So taking a step back, like all nine of them legitimately do need to be closed. And staff has recommended, due to budget shortfall issues, closing three every budget year for the next 3 years until all nine of them are closed. So that part is legitimate. The part that starts to become, I think, a little difficult is that if you are going to close these, you either need to build a new aquatic center there or you need to do a spray grounds there. And again, it'd be some combination of like what is best for the community and what's best for the citywide budget. But it seems like there's really no plan to replace them in the immediate future. Does that sound about right?
I think you're dead on. And I
Yeah.
looked into this because my first I hadn't been following this just because I did so much work on the aquatics plan back in the
Yeah.
day that I felt a little bit like I was done with it, which is a
Yeah.
weird thing because you're never done with anything. Um, and so I wasn't paying attention, and a friend of mine was like, "I hate this fucking town. They're closing all the pools." I'm like, "No, we're not. We just opened all these freaking. We just spent so
Yeah.
much money. What are you talking
Yeah.
about?" So it really alarmed me, and I went to look at it, and my first reaction always is, what dastardly enemy action has taken place here? And in fact, that's a terrible place to start from,
Yeah.
because staff is being quite reasonable about these aging facilities. And also, we don't need them as much. And
Yeah.
I know people are attached to them in some cases, but they've got to admit that we've given them other alternatives and frankly better alternatives. And it's not just the mega centers, if you have trouble getting to those. We've retrofitted neighborhood pools to be, I think what we called them was neighborhood aquatic centers.
Yeah. So they've only
So
done that, I think, 3 times so
yeah,
far,
but
which
they're
it was
great.
great. Yeah, it was great. But essentially,
TT is
like
my
we're behind the
yeah.
schedule. Yeah.
TT is my pool, and they
Yeah.
did the update. And I mean, TT was great before. It's just a nice pool, you know.
Yeah.
But now it's like all the bells and whistles, and it's fantastic. And the utilization is off the charts. I don't go
Yeah.
there,
Yeah.
and so it's a I don't know. I think actually I'm typically kind of a critic of Depard. There's some stuff they don't do all that well, but there's some stuff they do great. And one of the things that they do great is the new aquatics program. And
Yeah.
so if they're going to tell me, hey, it costs too much to keep these aging facilities open, I think I'm going to believe that and then ask the question of, okay, what does the future look like? What is access? Is there an access problem if these go away? And that's the thing I haven't seen anybody argue convincingly that we're really taking away people's access to aquatics facilities.
Yeah. I think there's going to be some of it. I mean, part of the other problem here is that the community pools are overwhelmingly concentrated in council districts 1 through 8, and on top of that, south of I-30. I think of the 9 of them, 8 of the 9 are in council districts 1 through 8. And I think it's at least 6 of them are south of I-30. So
Hmm.
you're about to shut down a lot of aquatic facilities in a part of the city where there are, probably very few personal pools in people's backyards. There are
Fewer for
some,
sure.
yeah, fewer, and then, less private options as well. So, in a lot of cases, I think, not all 9 of them need to be replaced by aquatic centers, but at the very least, some conversion to spray grounds, which again are relatively cheap for parks investment. And then some of them do make sense. I mean, again, like I know a lot of my examples are, Oak Cliff specific, but like Kid Spring Aquatic Center, which is the aquatic center I take my family to, and like the nice new one that I think your council, I think, voted to fund at
Yeah.
some point. Like the daily
And it's
attendance there,
great.
and yeah, it's great. So I mean, like my family and I like legitimately went like 3 or 4 times every month this summer. We were probably there 10 times total. That one sees like daily attendance like in the 200s, I think. And on weekends there can be lines on the weekend.
Yep.
And then Martin Weiss Community Pool, which is in like more like West Oak Cliff, even though it's like a in bad shape community pool, the daily attendance there is 100 plus. And like Kids Springs cannot absorb the Martin Weiss attendance. It
Yeah.
just can't. So I think that's a good example of like you can't just shut down Martin Weiss. You have to put something else there.
Yeah.
Perhaps a neighborhood aquatic center. I think park staff is like, I think they're completely on board with the plan that you talked about. It's just like they literally need the money from the city manager and city council to show up.
Yep. And honestly, I think they have proposed a budget that is going to reduce mowing schedules and some other things that people really
Yeah,
care about, and it's also going to prevent the deployment of the record-setting bond package that we just passed.
yeah,
So they've got a really strong argument to not be the focus of budget cuts, and I think it's a convincing argument. I
yeah,
think we should be funding parks at a level that at least allows us to deploy the money we agreed we should borrow.
yeah,
And the other thing about pools that park staff used to not pay attention to, and I think they've come around on this, is that there's a huge community of people who are lap swimmers. And
yeah,
the the things that are being closed are not primarily used for lap swimming, but they're some of our only lap swimming assets. Now, the new aquatic centers all have at least some facility for lap swimming, but it's often not usable because of the utilization numbers are so high that kids
Yeah.
wind up clogging the lanes and whatever. I'm not going to be bent out of shape about happy kids.
Yeah.
But when I was training for triathlons and stuff, I was trying to find places to freaking swim laps, and what I wound up having to do is just pay SMU to go use the bar pool. And I'm
Yeah.
like, I'm in freaking East Dallas. Where's my fucking lap pool? And now I have one,
You
thank God.
you didn't jump in White Rock Lake and develop a superpower, is what you're saying? No? Okay.
No.
Yeah.
I have
Oh, and then,
I
yeah.
have involuntarily gone for a swim in White Rock Lake, and
Yeah.
I'm amazed I survived. I also I'm very very sad about this. I in the same boat that I fell out of was one Jim Shoots who I thought I had killed.
That's funny. Oh, geez.
Very bad. Very
Yeah.
bad
Oh,
day.
but the yeah, going back to council, the straw vote. Oh wait, now that I'm thinking about it, the library one was 10-5, but the pool one was 9-6. And the vote
Who
that they
moved?
held, you mean like who switched? It was three people underneath. So essentially
Oh,
like
interesting.
yeah, so you had okay, so the vote on the pools was essentially a motion just to go ahead and close all nine this fiscal year. Don't keep three of them open another year and don't keep another three open for two more
Rip
years.
the Band-Aid off.
Rip the Band-Aid off. So there were four people that voted to close Skillman and all the libraries. I'll let you guess which four.
I know which four.
Okay.
You want me to name them? See if I'm right?
Sure, if you want.
Kara, Bill, EJ, Jesse.
Yep. Yep. And then uh
Why is becoming a right winger how Jesse thinks he's going to become mayor?
I don't know.
Because it worked for
Uh
Eric, I guess.
yeah, I guess so. And then Maxie Johnson voted to not fund Skillman and then voted to keep the polls open. And then Kathy Stewart and Paul Ridley voted to keep Skillman open but close the polls.
None of that's
Um,
surprising to me.
yeah. And
In
I think
character.
yeah, I think these three are certainly much more defensible because I think there's little things at the margins, for instance, like I don't think anyone thinks like Maxie Johnson is anti-library or like Paul Ridley is anti-pool. Like they're facing some tough votes here, and so I'm a lot more forgiving on like the nuance of it. And then obviously, I guess the other eight voted to keep Skillman open and basically keep the community pools on life support as long as possible.
Man, we didn't even get to committees or DEI or THC or Dallas Now. So I think
You
we're
want to
just
do
gonna have to record again next
okay.
week. The one thing I do want to tell people about is tomorrow night there is a listening session for the city's complete reversal of all of its DEI policies, which is a really weird, and let me tell you where it is. It is at West Dallas Multipurpose Center on Fish Trap at 6 p.m. So I would encourage you to show up. This is a very weird and ill-advised community meeting because they've already made the decisions. And so
Yeah.
now they want our input. Well, I'm going to show up and I'm going to give my input, and it is going to I don't know if there are any aspiring journalists out there. There will be quotes.
Yeah. Well, I don't know if you saw, but last week, Damien Levesque apparently showed up to council with a little badge that said like press, so he can be your journalist friend.
Jesus Christ. I just received confirmation on three different Texas Ethics Commission complaints that he filed that they had been, soundly rejected.
Yeah.
He
As somebody that used to do opposition research for a living, I will say uh, it is fun to file ethics complaints about people pre-election, knowing that they're going to go nowhere, but the process will take longer than the actual election itself.
Yeah, but the thing that you do if you're really doing it is
Yeah,
you file it and you immediately send that to the media.
yeah.
And and I don't think Damien listens to this, so he's probably not going to learn this trick, but that's how you do it. And
Well, he's his own media, so he reported it himself.
yes, exactly. In between homophobic rants about Chad.
And wondering why Adam Basildua wasn't still in the culinary industry, and wondering why Paula Blackman is, doing what she's doing. And I mean, it was terrible all around
Uh,
that election cycle.
it's honestly, in terms of actual litigation, it's better than the one before that. Like, uh,
Fair.
both in 2021 and 2023, I was working my ass off all spring and summer with ethics complaints, an actual election challenge.
Yeah,
Like, I mean, it was brutal, and
yeah,
I got paid nothing.
it's fair.
All right, man, we're gonna have to just do this next week, and the topics we didn't get to will hold, but I'm glad we got to these. So more to come, ladies and
Okay.
gentlemen.
Yeah, sounds
Great
good.
great to see you, friend.
You too. Bye.